Hey guys, it's Bella. Welcome back to another Mystery Monday. I hope you guys are all having a great start to your week. I know I am because I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to just sit down and chat with you guys and hang out for a little bit. And if you're new here, welcome. We talk about true crime cases on this channel on Mondays. So if that's something that you are interested in, then please come and join us and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. So today's case takes us to Jeju Island, which is a little island off of the south of South Korea. And this is actually one of the most infamous cases in South Korea just because of the gruesome nature of this crime. There was also a lot of CCTV footage, really eerie CCTV footage that was captured. So this just went huge in the media in South Korea and it really shocked pretty much the whole country. Before we do get into the case, I just quickly want to thank our sponsor, Saily. I love Saily. That's no secret. They are my go-to for an eSIM because they just make the whole process impossibly easy. It takes 10 seconds. All you have to do is go on the app, select your country, select your plan, and then that's it. You're set. You're set up. I've used them so many times over the last couple of years, every single time I travel, because they have eSIM data plans available for over 200 countries and regions. They also have plans that you can get that are multi-country if you're going on a big trip. And once you download an eSIM once, then you never have to do it again. So I'm never stuck without data, thanks to Saily anymore. Trust me, you don't want to be. I was once. I landed in LAX after a 13-hour flight. You know, you're kind of a little bit grumpy when you get off the plane because you haven't slept well. You've been sitting upright for 13 hours. Get there, no data. Wi-Fi in LAX doesn't work. I'm not kidding. I was standing around for an hour stressing. No clue how I was going to get up any of my bookings, how I was going to get up any of my addresses or anything to get anywhere. Airport's already overstimulating. You're exhausted. You've just come off a 13-hour flight. It's not fun. And it's never happened again, thanks to Saily. So make sure that you guys check them out. They are iOS and Android compatible. If you do get an eSIM and find that your device isn't eSIM compatible for whatever reason, they will give you a full refund. You can also get 15% off your first purchase of a Saily eSIM data plan if you download the app and use code BellaFiore at checkout. So I will leave all of the information for that in the description box down below, and let's go ahead and get into today's case. So on the 25th of May 2019, Mr. Kang spoke to his father at around 8 p.m. But an hour later, or just over an hour later, at around 9:16 a.m., his brother tried to call him. He didn't answer and his phone appeared to be turned off, and no one from his family ever heard from him again. Now, this was really strange because this day was a Saturday, and Mr. Kang had been talking to his dad about how excited he was that he was finally going to be seeing his son for the first time in 2 years. So he was supposed to have an arranged visit with his son and his son's mother, so his ex-wife, Yu-Jeong, and they were all going to be spending the weekend together, and his family was, of course, expecting updates. They were expecting photos and videos and to see how much his son had grown and changed over the last 2 years. But those photos and those videos never came, and Mr. Kang's family never heard from him again. 2 days later, on the 27th of May, his family reported him missing. And in an effort to try and locate him, the police first reached out to and contacted the mother of his child and his ex-wife, Yu-Jeong, because of course she was who he was meeting up with at the time of his disappearance. So they called her, and on the phone she was in tears, and she explained to the police that when they met up, Mr. Kang had actually sexually assaulted her, and that when she tried to resist, he had fled. She hadn't seen him since. She had recently gotten remarried, and so she told the police about a text exchange that she had with Mr. Kang, where she sent him a text that said, "I will report you for sexual assault," to which he responded, "I'm sorry, I was in shock. You remarrying was a shock. I'm sorry." Additionally, she also told the police that Mr. Kang's family claimed that he had attempted to take his own life just 2 hours after this exchange. So after hearing this, police, of course, they asked her to come into the station to just kind of talk about it with her and get an official statement about this, but she told them that she couldn't because she had already left the island by this point. She was no longer in Jeju. So Mr. Kang's brother, he actually decides to go out to the guest house that his brother, Yu-Jeong, and their son were meant to be staying at when they were meeting up over this weekend and spending the weekend together. He goes out to this guest house and he manages to get CCTV footage from neighboring buildings. And this footage shows the three of them, so Mr. Kang, Yu-Jeong, and their son, entering the guest house on the 25th of May. And it shows that Mr. Kang never left that guest house, or there's no footage of him ever leaving that guest house. It does show Yu-Jeong and their son leaving the next day on the 26th of May. And then the day after that, so the 27th of May, Yu-Jeong is seen coming to the guest house alone. She goes in and then she's seen leaving once again with 2 suitcases as well as 2 garbage bags, which she throws into a nearby bin. And this was the last time she was seen on the footage as well. And again, Mr. Kang is never seen leaving this guest house. So Mr. Kang's brother, obviously, he goes and he gives all of this information and this footage over to the police, and the police are immediately suspicious because duh. They then go and track Mr. Kang's phone, and they trace it to an area that is miles away from the guest house, but no trace of Mr. Kang. And they also managed to recover his car. It was still in the car park of the supermarket that the 3 of them had stopped at on the way to the guest house to get supplies for that weekend. So now with this information of, they found his phone, they found his car, they've got no signs of him, no footage of him ever having left that guest house, the police now believe this to be a homicide investigation. Yu-Jeong is being super cooperative. She also just doesn't really seem capable of murder, so she's not a suspect, she's not under suspicion, nothing. But then on the 31st of May, police, they go and they search the guest house and they do a luminol test, and the house just lights up. There is blood everywhere, in the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, the bedroom, everywhere. And the only people that are seen entering that apartment, of course, is Yu-Jeong, Mr. Kang, and their son. And their son is 5 years old at this point, right? Really, the only person that could have committed this murder, because they have the CCTV footage, it's very clear it's Yu-Jeong. So police go and search her house, which is on the mainland in Cheongju. And in her house, they find several weapons. They find 2 knives and a handsaw. And then in her car, they also find a blanket which has blood on it. It's like covered in blood. And so obviously samples of blood from both the blanket and also from the weapons found in her house are sent off for testing. And when those tests come back, that blood is proven to be Mr. Kang's blood. The very next day, on the 1st of June, Yu-Jeong was arrested and she was brought into the station for questioning.
사진제를 체크하는데 긴급 체크하겠습니다. 수갑. 오전 10시 32분경으로 사진제를 긴급 체크하겠습니다. 법인이 설명할 수 있고 불리한 짓을 거부할 수 있고 체포 정지를 신청할 수 있어요. 그런 적 없는데 우리가 당했는데 이렇게 체포 당할 만한 우리가 사유가 인정된다고
이거는 뭐예요? 버리는 거예요?
예, 지금 아까 쓰레기 걸려왔는데 일단 차에 타시죠. 어차피 들어가셔야
Now, if you remember, her first story that she gave to the police is that when they met up, Mr. Kang attempted to sexually assault her, and when she resisted, he fled. But during her interview after her arrest, she said that after he tried to sexually assault her, she actually stabbed him with a knife that she had purchased to slice watermelon. After this confession, she was, of course, charged with, and that was in the same month, so in June of 2019, and she was charged with abandonment, concealment, and damage of a body. A few days later, on the 4th of June, they conducted a more thorough search of the guest house. They took more samples, more forensics, they took more videos and photos of the scene of the crime. And at this point, the owner of the guest house was actually getting pretty annoyed. I guess annoyed that they can't get new people in there, they can't get it cleaned because it's kind of a crime scene. And so they said, can I clean it? I want to start getting people in here. And despite it being so early in the investigation, the police actually agreed and let the owner of the guest house get it cleaned and start, using it as a guest house again. I guess maybe they thought they had all of the forensics and photos and everything that they needed. So the guest house was cleaned and any evidence that was potentially missed was washed away. Anyway, so at this point, Yu-Jeong, she's been charged, she's been arrested, and she's being held in prison. And as I mentioned, she had remarried, and her second husband had come to visit her in prison. And she asked him during their visit if the police had come and taken a pouch of hers. And her husband just thought this was a little strange because if she's asking about it, it's obviously something that she's a little bit concerned about. So he went home, went through her stuff, found this pouch, and he finds a prescription for the drug zolpidem, which is used to treat insomnia. You might might have heard it before by the brand name drug, which is Ambien. The prescription showed that she had been prescribed 7 days worth of this drug, and she'd been prescribed it just 1 week before Mr. Kang's murder. So he brings this into the police, and the police actually go and look at the results of Mr. Kang's blood, the blood that was found on the blanket and the weapons in Ko Yu-Jeong's house. And his blood that was found on these items actually contained a high level of zolpidem. Immediately, this calls into question her self-defense claim, because why would he take a sleeping pill right before trying to assault her? It just didn't make any sense. On top of that, as it turns out, Mr. Kang and Ko Yu-Jeong had been going through a 2-year-long custody battle, right? So they divorced in 2017. They had a son. He was about 3 years old at the time of their divorce. So they had been going through the custody battle from their divorce in 2017 until his disappearance in 2019. And the only reason they were going through this custody battle is because Ko Yu-Jeong wouldn't allow Mr. Kang to see his son. That's why he hadn't seen him in 2 years. She just wouldn't allow it. It's not like she had custody and he was trying to fight for custody back. No, they divorced, and she just would not allow him to see his son. So he was going through this whole thing in the courts, basically just trying to be like, you need to let me see him. Let me actually give you a little bit of background on them and their relationship before we get into all of this. Basically, we really don't know a lot about Mr. Kang. The reason we're referring to him as Mr. Kang is because that's all he's known as. Like, his real name has never been released. We don't know his identity. But what we do know is that he was said to be a loving and devoted father. And in the years that Ko Yu-Jeong was preventing him from being able to see his son, he never gave up trying. He never gave up trying to see his son again. And he always remained hopeful that one day they would be reunited. So Ko Yu-Jeong, she was born on the 2nd of February in 1983 on Jeju Island, which is South Korea's largest island. She was the oldest of 3 children and had 2 younger brothers. Her mother and father split when she was young, but despite this, she had a relatively normal, comfortable upbringing. She grew up on Jeju Island, which has a population of around 700,000 people, but it still has a really tight-knit community. So you can imagine the shock horror when a brutal crime of this nature took place on the island. It was chaos, and people were just really in uproar demanding justice for Mr. Kang. Ko Yu-Jeong completed all of her schooling on Jeju Island, and after graduating, she enrolled at Jeju National University. She sometimes worked at her father's rental company, and those that came to know her over the years recall her as being quite ordinary and said that she had a pretty sweet and lively personality. While she was attending the university, that is where she met Mr. Kang through a volunteer group, and from this point on, their relationship blossomed. They traveled together, they volunteered together, and they just really enjoyed each other's company. After dating for 5 years, they got married on the 11th of June in 2013. And really on their honeymoon is where the cracks started forming and showing in their relationship. So allegedly, while they were at the airport waiting to board the flight back home, so this is, I guess, at the end of their honeymoon, Ko Yu-Jeong just exclaims that she's forgotten to buy something. She runs off to the duty free, and he goes and he meets her, and he's kind of not really too concerned. He's just letting her shop and do her thing. But the plane is boarding, and as the final boarding call gets closer and closer, he obviously starts getting concerned that they're going to miss their flight. And he says to her, you know, we should really go and get on the plane. And apparently she just freaks out at this. She just starts yelling at him and shouting at him. She just completely loses her cool. Turns into this massive thing, and she actually refuses to board the flight. So they miss it. They don't get on the plane. Mr. Kang actually did try and go and get on the plane himself, but the airline had this policy where all of the passengers in the same booking had to board together. So he wasn't able to. He just couldn't get on the flight because she refused to get on this plane. So after that, he goes back to the duty free after he is refused boarding. He goes back to the duty free. He finds Ko Yu-Jeong, and she's just kind of browsing as if nothing happened. She was remarkably calm for somebody that had just missed their flight, for somebody who had just had this big freak out in the duty free. She was completely unbothered as if it had never happened. And for Mr. Kang, you know, this was not the woman that he knew. This was not the woman that he had married. Eventually, when they did return back home to South Korea, they both enrolled in postgraduate programs at Jeju National University. And the stress of trying to juggle their studies, their finances, and they're already having these problems in their relationship now, it just made it really difficult for both of them in the relationship. To make matters even more complicated, Yu-Jeong found out that she was pregnant, and this was a completely unplanned, unexpected pregnancy, and it really just made everything worse. After Yu-Jeong gave birth to their son, things really only went downhill, and after the birth, she became really irritable, really aggressive, and it just got worse and worse until eventually in 2016, Mr. Kang filed for divorce. And he actually cited spousal abuse as the reason for this divorce. The divorce was finalized in 2017, and primary custody was actually given to Yu-Jeong, which is crazy when you think about it, considering the reason for the divorce was spousal abuse on her part. Like, she was the abusive one in the relationship, but the reason she was given primary custody was because of Mr. Kang's poor financial situation at the time. So he was still allowed to see his son, but Yu-Jeong just would not allow it. She wouldn't respond to his calls, his texts. He would even show up at the house to just try and see his son, and she just wouldn't even answer the door. This whole thing went on for about 2 years until he finally decided to file a formal complaint against her for violating his parental rights. During the process of filing this complaint, Mr. Kang found out that Yu-Jeong had already remarried, and her new husband had relocated and moved to mainland South Korea, to Cheongju, and in the process of doing this, she had left their son with her parents. This came as a complete shock to Mr. Kang because I honestly don't think he cared that she had moved on so quickly, but he was concerned that she had just moved away without their son, left their son with her parents, and he didn't even know. He just wanted his son to be in a safe and stable environment. So he files a civil dispute against Yu-Jeong, and very shortly before his murder, the court actually ruled that he must be allowed to see his son twice a month. And mind you, he was already allowed to see his son, but I guess the court ruling was just kind of to say, or just trying to make it clear to Yu-Jeong that she did actually have to let him see his son at least twice a month. At first, it seemed like Yu-Jeong wasn't going to cooperate. She was just going to continue ignoring this ruling, continue not allowing him to see his son. She actually didn't even show up for any of the 3 hearings, which she was fined for. And then all of a sudden, she just does this complete 180, and she sends Mr. Kang a text message suggesting that they all spend a weekend away together with their son. Mr. Kang didn't even question it because he was just so excited to finally be able to see his son after 2 years of fighting to be able to do so. He jumped at the chance to be able to meet up, to be able to spend a weekend with his son. They meet up at a theme park on Jeju Island, so Mr. Kang, Yu-Jeong, and their son, who was 5 years old at this time, and they have a really great time. Everything goes really well. They're just enjoying their time together, and eventually they leave to go to this guest house, and on the way to the guest house, they stop at a supermarket, they get supplies for dinner and just, food, because they were going to be spending the weekend in this guest house, which was located in Jecheon-yup. And this was the perfect place as well to spend a quiet weekend away together and really allow Mr. Kang to spend some quality time with his son. As you already know, they were seen on CCTV entering the guest house, and Mr. Kang was never seen leaving, though Yu-Jeong and their son were seen leaving. Police also discovered that shortly after Mr. Kang won his civil suit, Yu-Jeong had made internet searches such as bone weight, fatal doses of nicotine, zolpidem, and bloodstain. Now, the issue that police are facing at this point is that they don't have Mr. Kang's remains and they can't locate them. Yu-Jeong isn't denying anymore that she murdered him, but she is saying that she did it in self-defense, and she really isn't giving any more details about what happened on that day or particularly what happened after the murder. So police have to go and they look more extensively into her movements, and they are able to piece together a bit of a timeline. So on the 22nd of May, she is seen on CCTV shopping at Jeju supermarket, where she bought items including a saw, acid, rubber gloves, duct tape, and other tools. We already spoke about the CCTV footage from the guest house that Mr. Kang's brother found, so I won't go over that again. But after she's seen leaving the guest house on the 27th of May, she goes to a clinic nearby near the guest house to receive treatment for an injury that she had to her right hand. The following day, on the 28th of May, she's seen again going to a supermarket where she's seen on CCTV returning items that she had bought that were likely used in the murder. And what's crazy is in this footage, she looks completely unfazed. She has just killed her ex-husband, the father of her child. She is returning items that she used to kill him, and she looks like she's just running regular errands. And for all we know, parts of his body are still in her car while she's in this shop. She then went to a supermarket, and this time she buys disposable gloves, a travel bag, and 30 garbage bags. That evening at 8:30 p.m., she boarded a ferry heading towards Wando Island, and during that ferry ride, CCTV footage captured her throwing several plastic bags over the boat's railing. One source claimed that she admitted that his remains were in the bag she threw over the edge of the boat, but most articles seem to suggest that she was quite withholding of the information in regards to the disposal of the corpse. There were determined to be 3 locations where she disposed of his body parts because she dismembered him after murdering him. These locations included the ferry route and also her father's house in Gimpo. The Coast Guard searched along the ferry route for 3 weeks. And they also monitored the shores, seeing if anything would wash up. They searched for these plastic bags and for his remains, and nothing ever showed up, and Mr. Kang's remains have never been located. So after traveling on the ferry, Ko Yu-Jeong arrives in Wando at around 11 p.m. and from there she travels to her father's house in Gimpo, and she arrives at about 4 a.m. It's alleged that when she got to her father's house, she had thrown some of Mr. Kang's remains overboard, and then she brought some of his remains with her to her father's house and continued to mutilate some of his remains while at her father's house. And she had even ordered an electric saw to her dad's house, which the police did later recover. She was seen again on CCTV footage on the 31st of May discarding of a white garbage bag at her father's apartment. This bag was tracked to an incineration plant in Gimpo and then followed to another facility in Sago. And they did actually recover some bone fragments there that they believed to be human bone fragments, but it later turned out that they were actually animal bones. And we really don't actually know what was in the garbage bag that she disposed of at her parents' house. It could have been Mr. Kang's remains, or it very well could have been other items that were used in the murder, or even just unrelated garbage. To be honest, we really don't know what was in those bags. From the information that police were able to gather, they were also able to put together a version of what they believe happened on the night of the murder. So after they stopped at the supermarket and purchased supplies for dinner and for that weekend, they drove to the guest house where Ko Yu-Jeong then prepared a curry dinner for them. So they all sat and they ate and they had dinner together and they were enjoying their time together. But Ko Yu-Jeong had actually drugged Mr. Kang's portion with zolpidem. And so shortly after dinner, he drifted off and was eventually woken up to a knife being plunged into his chest. And in a moment of confused panic, he realized that the person who was doing that was the mother of his child and his ex-wife, Ko Yu-Jeong. He rolls off the bed and he starts trying to crawl towards the door, but he is losing blood extremely quickly. It was pouring out of him as he was struggling to stay alive. Ko Yu-Jeong then stabbed him twice more, and unable to fight anymore, he collapsed and he succumbed to his fatal wounds. She then proceeded to dismember his body and dispose of him in multiple different locations, at least 3 different locations. It was an incredibly brutal murder, and maybe the most shocking part about it as well is the fact that their 5-year-old son was present at the time that it happened. On top of this, after Ko Yu-Jeong's arrest, suspicions started to arise about her potential involvement in the death of her 4-year-old stepson, who had died just 3 months prior. His father, so Ko Yu-Jeong's second husband, told police that he had woken up to his son in an unresponsive state. He wasn't breathing and there was blood coming out of his mouth. The cause of death was determined to be suffocation, and at this point, nobody was looking at Ko Yu-Jeong for this death. In fact, they were actually looking at the boy's father. But in the end, nobody was charged for the death, and it was kind of thought to just have been a tragic accident. But then after Mr. Kang's murder, the boy's father, so Ko Yu-Jeong's second husband, filed a formal complaint against his wife for the child's death. Now, the initial investigation into his son's death was actually handled really poorly by the Cheonju Police Department. So after he filed this now formal complaint that he's filed, it was passed on to the Jeju Police Department so that they could conduct a more formal investigation. They found that on top of all of her other suspicious searches that she had made in relation to Mr. Kang's murder, she had actually made another suspicious search, which was for death by suffocation, which directly pointed to her involvement in the death of her stepson. According to her husband as well, the boy's father, she didn't even attend her stepson's funeral, and this was a really sore spot in their marriage that they fought about often. As it turns out, their relationship was also a pretty violent one, and following the complaint that her husband made, it came out that they often had frequent violent altercations. According to the husband, Yu-Jeong threw scissors at him, threw dishes at him, and one time she even lunged at him with a weapon. And she denies all of these claims and says that he was actually the violent one, but really it's starting to look like a bit of a pattern, especially when you consider that when Mr. Kang divorced her, he cited spousal abuse. And so she was eventually charged with the murder of her stepson as well. Her trial began on the 12th of August 2019 and took place at Jeju District Court. Initially, she hired 5 lawyers, and before the trial even began, all but one of these lawyers resigned and refused to represent her, citing psychological pressure. I honestly think that they were receiving a lot of backlash from the public because this case was huge. Like, the public were outraged. The media was reporting on this nonstop. It was huge in the whole of South Korea, but it was crazy in Jeju. There were a lot of angry people, and rightly so, because this woman killed her ex-husband and the father of her son in front of their 5-year-old son. And then she was also accused of killing her 4-year-old stepson. So the public were just enraged by the whole thing. During the trial, the prosecution painted a picture of a premeditated murder. And although they didn't have the body, they didn't have any of Mr. Kang's remains, they did have a lot of evidence that pointed to Yu-Jeong having committed the crime. Their main evidence was the blood of his that was found in her car, along with the weapons that also had his blood that were found in her apartment, and the fact that his blood was found to have traces of zolpidem, and she had a prescription for 7 days of zolpidem, which she was prescribed just 1 week prior to the murder. If it was indeed self-defense like she claimed, why would he have zolpidem in his system? And the zolpidem is really where their case comes into kind of disproving her self-defense claims, because if he had attacked her and that's why she had to defend herself, why would he have taken sleeping pills beforehand? What I also find so crazy about this case is the fact that she very clearly went through great lengths to conceal this murder. You know, she planned it very meticulously, obviously. She dismembered him, cleaned up the crime scene. You know, they found the luminol, but they didn't find the blood. They just knew that it had been cleaned up and the presence of it was there because of the luminol tests. Dismembers him, disposes of his remains in at least 3 different locations, so in a very thought out, very planned way. And then she just leaves this blood-soaked towel in her car and these weapons in her apartment with his blood on them. To further discredit her claims of self-defense, they also brought up her internet searches. But her defense argued against all of these searches. So for the search that she did for weight of bones, they argued that she was Googling this so that she could make bone broth. In relation to the search for zolpidem, they claim that she Googled this because she was curious about the burning sun incident, which is like this big K-pop scandal that took place in 2019, which also doesn't even make sense because she had a prescription for zolpidem. So I don't even understand why you're trying to explain that away in that way. The search that she made for fatal dose of nicotine, they argued that that was because she was concerned for her husband's health because he was a smoker. And then in relation to her search for blood stain, the defense tried to argue that she had searched this up to try and get rid of some blood stains from menstruating. So the defense really had something for everything, even if none of it made sense and it was just, I don't know. It sounds silly to me. Like, honestly, their responses to these searches sound so stupid to me, but their argument actually hinged on the fact that she was now a sole parent, and so it would be detrimental for their child if she was to be incarcerated. The idea that Mr. Kang had also sexually assaulted her or attempted to sexually attack her was also baseless, and the claim really relied heavily on those texts that she provided, which the prosecution alleged that she had actually faked anyway. Then when it came to the claims of the death of her stepson, her husband claimed that she had made him a drink on the night of the death, and after he drank this, he got really tired and he went to bed early. And while he was asleep is when his son died. The prosecution believed that she had obviously drugged this drink so that he would fall asleep, and then she suffocated his son while he was drugged, basically. Yu-Jeong's defense was that she said that her husband had a poor sleeping posture, and so he may have accidentally suffocated his son while he slept. Yu-Jeong did give her own statement at her trial on the 30th of September, and through tears she pled for leniency and reiterated her claims that she had been the victim of an attempted sexual assault and that her ex-husband's death was nothing more than an accident. But on the 20th of February 2020, she was convicted for the murder, dismemberment, and concealment of a corpse of Mr. Kang. She was, however, acquitted of the death of her stepson due to a lack of evidence. She was sentenced to life in prison, but neither she nor the prosecution were actually satisfied with this result, so they both appealed, and there was a second trial that took place in July. So obviously she appealed because she's trying to say I'm not guilty. The prosecution appealed because they're saying life in prison isn't enough. We actually believe that she deserves the death penalty. And so we want to re-argue it, and we are demanding the death penalty. Mr. Kang's brother told the media, "I want a death penalty. Even life imprisonment would be lenient for her." There was even actually a petition which had 210,000 signatures basically demanding that she gets the death penalty for her crime. Despite all of this though, her original sentence was upheld, and she was once again sentenced to life in prison and acquitted for the murder of her stepson. Both sides appealed once again. The case went to the Supreme Court, and once again the same sentence was upheld. Mr. Kang's murder, she got life imprisonment, and she was acquitted of her stepson's murder. And so at this point, her life, because this is in the Supreme Court now, her life sentence was finalized. Mr. Kang's funeral was held over 3 days from the 27th of August 2019, and because they didn't have a body, they didn't have any of his remains, they had the funeral with 7 strands of his hair and some of his clothes. I actually read some articles in this case that criticized the police, and I read one that apparently 60 or so residents on Jeju Island actually went to the police station and protested that their investigation had failed. At the time, there was also a petition going around to get the chief of police at Jeju East fired. So there was kind of just a lot of discourse about the police at that time. The National Police Agency did perform an inquest, and they did find that they didn't preserve the crime scene properly because, they allowed the owner of the guest house to just come and clean it and wash away potential evidence. And there was also a failure to identify the use of zolpidem in the crime. They only found that out because of Yu-Jeong's husband. The inquest also noted that the police weren't even the ones who found the CCTV footage from the guest house. That was Mr. Kang's brother that found that and brought that to the police. When you think about it, the police really didn't find out much about this case. Everything was kind of brought to them by other people that had found it out. So following Yu-Jeong's sentencing, her husband also filed for divorce and also for alimony. And in October of 2020, their divorce was finalized, and she was ordered to pay 30 million won in alimony, which is around or just over 32,000 Australian dollars. But yeah, that's everything for this case. So that is all. I would love to hear what you guys think of this one. This was a huge case in South Korea. There was it was actually kind of difficult to research because most of the articles about this case were in Korean. So there were definitely some translation issues that were kind of hard to figure out. But this was huge in South Korea, and for good reason. People in South Korea and especially in Jeju Island were outraged by this. Over 210,000 people signed a petition saying that life in prison wasn't enough and that she deserved the death penalty. And it is so shocking that she committed such a brutal and vicious crime in front of her 5-year-old child and murdering the child's father in front of him as well. Genuinely, that is so unfathomable. I couldn't find any updates on the child now. He's lost both of his parents now as well. But I really don't know anything about where he is, if maybe he's living with her parents, I don't know. Maybe his parents, I have no updates on the child. But he would be 10 or 11. I can't even imagine. I don't know. I can't imagine if maybe she put him in another room, or if he was actually saw what happened, because I saw reports that he was present during the attack. But obviously Mr. Kang had gone to lie down after he was, presumably drugged. And so it may have happened in a different room. She had gone into the bedroom and kind of attacked him. Maybe the child was asleep. We don't know the details because it's not like she gave all of these details, but you can only imagine and you can only wonder and what that would do to you. I mean, I just hope he's in a happy and healthy and safe environment now. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think that she was responsible for the murder of her stepson? I have to say, I do think so. I mean, based on everything, that seems the most likely scenario, but it's just awful. And I can't even think of a reason she would want to murder her stepson, 4 years old. He's 4 years old. It's unimaginable, really. But yeah, that's everything for this case. That's all from me today, guys. I will be in the comments, as always, to talk to you about your thoughts. And yeah, that's all. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. And hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.